Looking for evidence of how good our AI generated theme song is, Michael Graham hates it. That means it must be exceptional. Thank you for joining the morning meeting. Those of you who were here on the pregame show got to hear another round of one of our two theme songs. It's not the preferred one by some, but I love them both. Thank you for joining. Moments ago, the president finished a 40-minute interview on Squawk Box. We'll have full breakdown and coverage of that in just a moment, along with all of today's news. Analysis from two leading experts, Sean Spicer, Dan Turrentine, and then your questions. So if you're here on the two-way platform and want to be part of a conversation like no other, please raise your hand. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand. Don't put smack in the chat. Think about the words love, peace, and understanding, not necessarily in that order. And please, won't you join us on this miraculous journey we call our daily miracle of the morning meeting. Gentlemen, good morning. Did you both get to watch the entirety of the Squawk Box interview?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was great.
So
great way to start your morning.
I will say, I'll quickly run through the daybook, but I almost don't need to because there's not much going on.
Welcome to August in Washington.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the president today is having a limited public schedule. He's signing an executive order at 4. Does anybody know what that is? Is that the banking one? Is it 401c? Is it the banking one? I don't know. He didn't say that on Squawk Box explicitly that I heard. Anyway,
I believe I read this morning.
Okay, so he's signing executive order.
By the way, I will say the thing that jumps out at me that probably goes unnoticed to most is the where. That's in South Court. And I think I can count on one hand the number of times in the first term the president crossed West Exec Avenue.
Yeah, but that could be because like the oval's like getting painted or something, right? Doesn't necessarily. Could mean they want an audience. Yeah, I mean, they want an How many people does that thing hold? Like 200?
Not anymore. It's actually an interesting question that you asked. Under Biden, they transformed the auditorium into what is basically when you see people at the White House now doing a podcast hit, they've turned it more into a studio. So you've probably got seating for 50, but they've diminished the size of it tremendously.
Yeah. All right, so maybe that's on debanking. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the president's in, and there's really nothing else on the schedule. There'll be more developments in redistricting. We'll talk about that, but there's nothing on the schedule right now. The interview started. Joe Kernan pressed the president repeatedly, pressed slightly in air quotes, but he did try to get an answer out of him on the firing of the head of the BLS. And the president stuck to his position, toggling back and forth between suggesting she was fired because she was incompetent versus she was fired because he thought she was crooked. He leaned more heavily into crooked than many people around the president would have preferred, but no news there. He didn't say anything new. Where he did say something new was regarding the Fed chair, and explicitly, and even for a man who frequently changes his mind, clearly took Scott Bessent out of the running 110.
President Trump, you said there are 4 names. There are 2 other names that have been mentioned in the press. One is Governor Waller. The other is the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Are those the 4 that you're considering?
Well, I love Scott, but he wants to stay where he is. I'll take him off because I asked him just last night, is this something you want? Nope, I want to stay where I am. He actually said, I want to work with you. It's such an honor. I said, that's very nice. I appreciate that. But no, Scott wants to do what he's doing. He's doing a great job, and he wants to do what he's doing. So I just take him off. He does not want it. He likes being Treasury Secretary. He's doing a really good job. We made the greatest trade deals in the history of our country. We had to because we were being ripped off by the world. It's not like we had a choice.
There are those who long said that Bessent was having too much fun and enjoying the influence he had as Treasury Secretary. And although being great at both jobs might have appealed to him, that he would in the end turn it down. There are those who said that. Sean, why do you think Scott Bessent made that decision?
Look, there's a lot of personal, I think sometimes you get in the head of somebody, whether or not they truly love the job they're in or they don't want the headache of the other one, who knows? So I don't know the answer. And I got to say, I obviously put him way lower on the list now for obvious reasons, but that's, in Washington, sometimes it's the less you asked for a job, the more you become the candidate. I don't know. I think this puts Kevin Hassett in the driver's seat to some degree. because he will take it and he will say he wants it, which is very different than Bessent. And I think Trump wants people to want something. So Trump is not somebody who tries to talk you into a job. So if truly Bessent said, I don't want it, I don't think he would have to have a total inside play that we don't see coming.
Right. So before we had, or at least I had Bessent.
I think it means it's Bessent.
Yeah. Hold on. Before we had Bessent, Kevin 1, Kevin 2, and door number 4. And I'm a big fan of door number 4 because, Sean, my reporting suggests that there's some people who don't want Hassett to get the job.
I'm sure.
For a variety of reasons, some influential people. And I'm still skeptical about Warsh. So, Dan, listen to the president. This is also from Squawk 109. Listen to what he says about Warsh and see if you share my view that this was not bullish on Warsh, even though he's the establishment and DC's favorite candidate right now, and some on Wall Street. 109, please.
An extended interview with one of the prospective replacements, Kevin Warsh. Were you watching that day, or?
I was. He's very good. He's very good. He's very good. Sometimes they're all very good until you put them in there, and then they don't do so good. But a lot of them, I think he's a very good guy. I think I say Kevin and Kevin. Both Kevins are very good, and there are other people that are very good too. But
Kevin's
a lot
like
of
Karens. I don't know if that's good.
A lot of times they're very good. Like this character that we have in there now, Jerome Too Late Fell. He was very good.
All right, stop it there.
Sir,
what did Joe? Can you guys make out what Joe said there? He said something that's not good. Did you guys make that out?
No, so I thought he said something about something Kevin, and I couldn't tell what I didn't know what it was. But
somebody go back. Yeah, somebody go back off camera and listen to that. So Dan, I read with my limited knowledge of Donald Trump, I read that response about Warsh to me, and he's not very bullish on Warsh. How do you read that?
Yeah, because he pivoted away and he tried to bring in other people, and I've heard it the same way in real time that was not good. I'm more in Sean's camp about Bessent, because I actually think if Bessent's saying right now he doesn't want it, he's not making the choice right now. If Trump is...
Well, although, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the president suggested he might make it pretty soon. He suggested he might make it this week in conjunction with naming someone to fill the unexpired term of the member who stepped down stepping down before the unexpired term in January.
Look, it's possible because it's always possible Trump does anything. It's possible he names it this week because he wants to get off of the insanity of the BLS stuff, and he wants to put somebody out there so that for the next 7 months, he can just kick the tire of Powell and say, if Bob was in there, things would be better, right? But as soon as I get Bob, I still think it's Scott Bessent.
Sean, I think Bessent is out, and I think Warsh is not a rising stock based on his answers today. You know him better. Do you agree with either or both of those?
Yeah, there's two things against Warsh, right? One is he doesn't have a personal relationship with Warsh, and Trump has recognized that all these key positions, Fed chair, FBI director, et cetera, you need to make sure that you know them, they know you, right? That's his view on stuff. And if you look at the picks throughout his entire cabinet, that's been the case. So that's one strike against him. The second is what he pivoted to. They're all good until you put them in there. And that's the big hit against both Warsh and Governor Wallen, which is that they're saying what they want, what he wants to hear now. But the detractors of both of them are saying, yeah, look what they said 5 months ago. Look what they said 6 months ago.
And they have no loyalty to Trump.
Right. So what I'll say, and this is why I'll go back to Hassett. Yeah, I'm sorry. I made one person. No, actually, it's Hassett. It is now the conglomeration of Scott Bessent and Kevin Hassett. He's going to morph the two. My apologies to Kevin Hassett. But I believe that, look, if you look at the longevity that Hassett's been there with him, right? So first term, he wrote a book. He's been very clear on the record over and over again, his position. He's been very loyal to Trump. I think that there are detractors of Kevin Hassett, but I think at the end of the day, there are more supporters of him. The president likes him, and the hits against Hassett are superficial in a sense in terms of his stature. He didn't run a major corporation of such. So that's something the president admittedly wants to be able to say. He's number one at Harvard and ran Goldman Sachs, or right.
Correct.
So
Correct.
but it's easier to overcome that. He has much more going for him in terms of his personal relationship and his long-standing positions that are pro-America First, pro-Trump. I will tell you, I will keep an eye out for who Steve Bannon throws his weight behind, because if Kevin Hassett can get one or two more serious MAGA players to publicly push him, I think that gets him over the top.
All right, Dan, I'm telling you, get off of your Besson thing. The president would not have said that if it was going to be Besson. I believe, here's the state of play. They're going to try to find somebody from door number 4. And if they can't find somebody the president feels good about behind door number 4, it'll be Hassett. That's, I believe, the state of play. All right. The president also
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do both of you guys think he's going to name someone before Labor Day?
No.
Okay.
Before Labor Day? Sure. No. Labor Day. No. Before Halloween. I'll say before Halloween. Okay. But it could happen. It could happen today also.
Yeah.
I think the search behind door number 4 is going to extend this. That's my sense. All right.
I will say he also that the tell that he gave on that replacement for that one position, where he said it'll be for that was interesting, right? He said only for that 4-month period, correct, which is interesting.
Correct. Although it could be a tryout, obviously. All right. Here's the president on China taking issue with the notion that he was seeking a summit with Xi. So hop on pop.
You got my joke.
Hop on pop 113.
But we're getting very close to a deal. We're getting along with China very well. I will tell you, you had a point when I had 145% tariffs on. I put in for fentanyl. I actually said to people, where are we now with China, by the way? Because I kept adding more and more. They said, sir, you're up to 145%. I said, you got to be kidding. So I sort of had to bring it down a little bit. But when it was up to 145%, meaning we were doing zero business with China, China was collapsing. I don't know if you know that. You haven't reported it if you do. But China was collapsing. China is very reliant on the United States. My relationship with him is very good. I think we'll make a good deal. It's not imperative, but I think we're going to make a good deal.
We were not going to play it, but his description of his conversations with Merkel previously about U.S. autos and his description of his conversations with the Swiss, is it prime minister or president? I don't know. Prime minister, was incredible. I mean, he's like, I never heard of this lady. She wanted a 1% tariff. It was hilarious. Probably should play it, but we won't. Dan, we talk all the time about the prospects of a China summit. From listening to the president this morning, what's your sense of whether it'll happen and what his posture is towards it?
I still think it'll happen. What I find interesting is when Trump is portrayed as weak, he frantically tries to get on top of that to say, no, we're winning, we're dominant, they're weak, they're begging me for something, right? Someone's begging for a job, somebody's begging for an endorsement. By all accounts, and I believe both of you guys even report this, Trump wanted a meeting with Xi. We freaked out as a country when China withheld the rare earth minerals. CEOs of major companies, defense, autos, tech, went to Trump and said, we are weeks away from major league problems. By all accounts, we asked to meet the Chinese in Switzerland to try to cut a deal. We put on the table access to the AI chips, which is what China's wanted, if they would release the rare earth minerals. By the way, they're actually now backtracking on that, which is starting to get press in the business press. Trump is mortified that we're begging China. So he has to get, this is the 3rd time in a week he's tried to flip this. Oh, I didn't ask for anything. Oh, I don't care. They were losing, not us. We were winning. We were dominating them. They're begging us. The reality is we've been begging the Chinese. Just got to say it.
Sean, I agree with Dan's analysis. How about you?
I think that look, there's whether he wants it. I mean, I think that he loves the pomp and circumstance of a big meeting with Xi or the Chinese.
But it's an 18-hour flight, he said.
Yeah. It's 12. And on Air Force One, I bet you can do it in 10.
Right, but then it's a weird friggin' thing to say.
Yeah. I will tell you a funny story real quick. Back in the day when I was doing trade work, the United came out with a direct flight to Beijing and everyone was disappointed and no one could figure out why. And it was because the US government allows you to fly business if it's over like 12 and a half or 13 hours. And the second it got to be just under that, everyone went, no. I don't want to fly economy for 10 hours. So look, I still think one's going to happen. It may be a little more delayed than I had thought. I believe that they would have been there now in late July, early August, but I still think it's on the agenda. He loved hosting Xi at Mar-a-Lago during the first term, and I think he wants to kind of head over there and have the Saudi Arabia treatment.
All right, the president today told a story about his own debanking.
Yeah.
This is one of the most undercovered stories of the last 10 years. And it's undercovered because the New York Times and the Washington Post doesn't want to write stories that are sympathetic to Republicans, and the Wall Street Journal. This is an incredible story of people who have been debanked across the conservative movement. And it's not some small thing to be debanked. It's not like, okay, I can't bank at Chase, I'll bank at Bank of America. If you are debanked, you cannot bank anywhere. And even if you don't run your own business, where of course you need a bank account, not having a bank account, credit cards, ATM, it's Orwellian. And go look through the archives of the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal. You will find next to no stories about this. So the president signed the executive order, and here he is telling his own story of being debanked. 111, please.
Well, they did discriminate. I had J.P. Morgan Chase. I had hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. I could see if they want to, if they want to do something bad because you don't have any money and you're defaulted and they took people out, but I'll give you me as an example. I had hundreds of millions. I had many accounts loaded up with cash. I was loaded up with cash, and they told me, I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out. I said, you got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years. They said, and I mean, I had all this. I didn't know what to do with it. And I went to, and you could ask him, maybe he's not going to admit it. So I said, I was informed by my people that we have to get out of Chase Manhattan. That's Jamie and J.P. Morgan Chase. So I said, I can't believe it. Well, I was never in this situation before. I've never had anything like it. And it's not like, gee, you defaulted on a loan. I can understand that. That's different. But there's no default. I mean, there's nothing but cash. I have a really great company.
So the Wall Street Journal reports that the executive order would subject banks who violated an order banning discrimination against conservatives, subject to monetary penalties, consent decrees, or other disciplinary measures. And then later in the story, they say it could also be potentially referred to the Justice Department for criminal charges. Dan, will this executive order, which as best I can tell from the journal description is not retroactive, will this be welcomed by the banking community, or will they fight it?
I think they won't fight it because they don't want to pick a fight with Trump. Look, as you say, it's been underreported. It's the first time that I had heard that he spoke to Jamie Dimon, and he made it sound almost like Dimon called the Trump people, but that he didn't do it. And then Trump went on to say he called Brian Moynihan, and Brian Moynihan said no as well, who's the CEO of Bank of America. Look, it's not that as Trump said, it's one thing if you go into default or you've engaged in some illicit financial activity where a bank would say, okay, you're violating banking laws. I imagine this was after January 6th when he was unpopular and they just didn't want to be associated with him, which is not okay in my opinion. So I look forward to hearing more about it, but I don't think the banking community will say a peep about it. They'll take it.
Sean, this may sound like a rhetorical or plaintive question, but how could this have happened in America? Don't these banks have boards of directors that have some conservatives on them?
No. I mean, honestly, this is, to your point, beyond Trump, this is a big issue, especially in the Second Amendment area, where they have debanked organizations or anyone that has to do with firearms, Second Amendment, right to life issues.
Also crypto, but not just those sectors.
Right. But I'm just saying that this has been going on, to your point, largely unnoticed. The bank that I'm on the board of, in full disclosure, Old Glory Bank, was literally, that was the nexus behind it, is to give a place where no matter your views, your money could be safe and grow. And it's grown 245% in the past 24 months, because people are basically like, I don't want to have to worry about it. So it's not just a cultural thing. It's the philosophy is you will never be debanked. But the idea that major corporate, I mean, to your point, no, these boards are complicit in this and no one's speaking up for it. But you're literally telling organizations and people, because of your political views, your money's no good here. And to your point, it's not as simple as, oh, well, then we'll just go from Bank of America to Chase. They're all in it together.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, because it sounds like this happened to Trump after 2020. In my own experience, in my previous career, I can't tell you how much board of directors lost their minds the summer of 2020 after George Floyd and everything else. The pressure on companies to start making statements, because I had many meetings, many phone calls advising not to do this, because once you open the door to one person's politics, you expose yourself to the pendulum swing. And then you're caught, kind of trying to ping pong and satisfy who's ever in power. But boards of directors were considered wading into or out of, in this instance, so many things that historically companies would never have touched, ever.
100%. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to your question, though, part of the reason that they don't cover it, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, is because they agree. I mean, the New York Times says good. I'm glad he can't get banked. And the Washington Post, so it's not a story to them because the reporter says, yeah, you don't deserve. I mean, most of these people agree with the leftist tactics.
But I want to know, where were the Republican members of Congress? Why didn't they do more?
Oh, because they were being pummeled about January 6th. So one of the big movements in corporate America was cut off all PAC money to any Republican.
But this isn't just about January 6th.
Well, Mark, but it all became this stew of George Floyd, social injustice, Charlottesville.
You're right. You're right about the context, Dan. I'm just saying the silence on the part of people who were affected and people who should have advocated for them. It's un-American what happened.
Well, but the problem was that first of all, I agree with you, Mark, on the sense of where were Republican members of Congress speaking up and saying this. But to Dan's point, they were getting squeezed by saying, hey, we're going to cut off this. They weren't the majority. And you watch these guys, this is where I have a problem with my own party, where all of these guys are not coming back and like, oh, I'm really sorry we screwed you, Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera. And I get it. They're playing a game. Smart on them. And that's their business. That's their job, is to look out for their companies. But our job on the right is to hold them accountable and to say, no. You don't get back with $1 million contribution to the inaugural.
I would like to interview every executive producer and every executive editor, every major news organization, and say, did you know about this story? Did you even know about it?
Yeah, and I can just say, Sean, Republicans did. So I want to be careful here. I advised what I advised. The entity did not end up doing what a lot of Democrats wanted. I got a phone call from a Republican saying, if you go ahead with what Democrats are saying, we will never forget. We're keeping score.
Yeah.
Now, I knew that already, so they didn't have to call me, but I always appreciated being called. But both sides were threatening, you have to do this because this is outrageous. If you do this, it's insanity and we'll never forget. So Republicans were quietly under the radar.
They were.
But back in the day, if Tom DeLay was still in Congress, we would have a list and say, you're not dealing with these guys again. And to me, the idea that JP Morgan and Bank of America got away with this and they're not paying a bigger price is bad on Republicans. Republicans need to hold them accountable and say, okay, you guys had it your way, but you know what? Now we're going to hold you accountable. And it is shameful that Republicans are not holding them more accountable. And look, to Mark's point, this was a big issue with the Second Amendment and pro-life communities for a long time before it reached a boiling point. And so
it's also part of why the multi-billion-dollar crypto industry is now totally a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republican Party.
Well, it's also why, like I keep saying, I don't feel like this is the end of democracy, what Trump is doing. Like Democrats did some of the same things We just did it in a different way, and most people's sensibilities in the media agreed with it. But
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. All right, guys, we're going to do the next 4 topics, one sentence each, one sentence, and you say what's coming next, what's to look for next in these areas. Okay, here we go. 103, redistricting. There's, this is still multi-ring circus. Texas still hasn't got the Democrats back. A lot of Democratic governors are still over-promising what they can do to try to do their own stuff. Donald Trump this morning pointed out correctly that Massachusetts has 0 Republican House members, even though he got like 40% of the vote in Massachusetts. So, Dan, what should people look for next on this multi-ring redistricting fight? One thing.
Newsom and Pritzker's competition.
Thank you, Dan. Sean.
I think how and when House Democrats in the Texas legislature return. So how long do they hold out? And that matters to me.
Mine's a little longer term, but what are the federal courts going to say? Because I could see some of these things being struck down in a way that people aren't currently factoring in. Okay, Russiagate yesterday, 104. It was reported that the Attorney General has convened at least one grand jury and one federal prosecutor to look at Russiagate ties. Dan, what are you looking for next on this?
New and interesting facts that might emerge.
Okay. Sean.
I think how, look, who and what, how big is who is part of the name? I think that's the key to me. Is this just a one-off thing? Like, they've got to be going after somebody. So to me, that will be the big thing.
Watch for Mr. Brennan, because the statute of limitations is run on so much of this. Watch for Mr. Brennan to be brought before the grand jury and tried to be lured into a perjury trap. Mamdani yesterday appeared with Elizabeth Warren. They got a very funny New York Post wood out of it. Here's a little bit of Senator Warren, who's already endorsed Mamdani, but praising him to the high heavens. 105, please.
And when Andrew Cuomo is shocked to discover that's actually what New Yorkers want, and that he thinks the right response is get me some billionaires to put some money in to put a stop to that, that says a lot about Andrew Cuomo and who he thinks New York City should work for. So anybody who thinks New York City should work only for the billionaires probably should go with Andrew Cuomo, but anybody who thinks it should work for the people of New York City who are here doing the work every day, for the families who want to live in this city and be able to afford housing and childcare, anyone who thinks that the role of the mayor is to make life work better for working people should be here with Zoran. That's why I'm here.
Sean, what are you looking for next in the mayor's race? One sentence.
Oh, can I just say, by the way, I know but the New York Post headline today was my favorite when I got coffee. African American meets Native American. I look for whether, we've talked about this before, whether there's any consolidation among the other candidates, which I don't think will happen.
Dan.
Can Mamdani start to consistently get above 40%?
I would say efforts so far to knock him out with Oppo have failed miserably, in part because the New York Times is now foursquare for Mamdani. And so the question, I've used only commas so far. And so the question is, can the establishment rally behind a strategy, a single frame to knock him out after Labor Day? They'll have one shot. Okay, that was a semicolon.
When they all get back to New York City.
Exactly. when the oligarchs return from Nantucket and the Hamptons. All right. 106. Lots going on in Israel. No one's really deciphered what Witkoff said over the weekend when he announced the end of piecemeal ceasefire negotiations. Hamas continues to release these just gruesome hostage videos. And Israel's leaders seem to be readying an offensive, as Netanyahu, quote, according to the New York Washington Post headline, vows to occupy Gaza. So we don't really know what's going on, except there does seem to be an effort by Netanyahu to use more military force here and to take control. Sean, what should people look for next in Israel and Gaza?
I think whether the U.S. makes any public comments, meaning the administration, that would seem to put the brakes on the Netanyahu plan. So is this a green light, go, or is it more of a yellow, like, hey, slow it down a little? That's where I think Bibi feels empowered right now, emboldened rather, and we'll see if there's this. Witkoff made comments, as I referred to yesterday over the weekend, about getting everybody back, and that was really bullish. And yet Netanyahu, and so I'm sort of intrigued whether there's something bigger here.
Dan.
I wasn't good at grammar, but that was a lot of comments.
Yeah. One semicolon.
Does the U.S. and Saudi Arabia support occupation of Gaza?
Damn, you stole mine. That's the answer. All right. We've got one more topic. Raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. We'll be getting to you in just a moment. Gallup, really interesting survey, 107. Gallup asked people basically fave, unfave of newsmakers, 14 newsmakers around the world. Not surprisingly, the Pope, this 108A, the Pope is most favorably viewed. The Pope's fave, unfave, 57 fave, 11 unfave. Pretty good for a man touched by God. Zelensky, perhaps surprisingly, again, this is amongst Americans, 52 fave, 34 unfave. Here are the two of the next three. Pretty interesting. Bernie Sanders, 49-38, and AOC, 34-38. Surprisingly popular to some. All right, keep going down the list. Next set, Bobby Kennedy, underwater, as the pollsters say, 42-47. Joe Biden, 43-54. JD Vance, 38-49, perhaps surprisingly low for some. Gavin Newsom, also underwater, 30-41. Pete Hegseth, 26-38. One more set of names. The President of the United States, 41-57. Marco Rubio, surprisingly low for some of us, 31-47. Netanyahu, 29-52. And Musk, the most unpopular, 33-61. So let's stay on this for a moment. And I'll just ask you guys for your impressions of if you've got a theory. And we'll start with Marco Rubio. Why is Marco Rubio so unpopular? Either of you got a theory about that?
I don't. Having to execute what's becoming unpopular policy.
But which policies is he associated with that are?
I think all of them. I mean, the Israel positions become unpopular. Trump's initial Ukraine positions become unpopular.
I don't know. I don't see Rubio in the news enough for people to hang all that on him, even if it is unpopular.
They are if they watch two-way.
Good point. Okay, Sean, do you want to say anything about Rubio?
What I will say in general, I pulled up the Gallup background information, and the interesting thing is normally you put demographic data in there, like, so it says, so they put the total universe plus or minus 4 because it was just over 1,000, but they didn't put the normal men, women party, which I only asked that because it just seems a little skewed to me. Again, I don't get the Rubio one because if you look, it's one thing for him not to be as known. Maybe he was a U.S. senator from Florida, but like to have, so that right now you're at 50 plus. I mean, you're at basically 80% full name ID, which is not far off, right? And yet, so I was actually I'm intrigued at. I would like to have looked at the crosstabs. It doesn't. That one just doesn't make sense. There's something that says this doesn't.
Michael, call him for the crosstabs, Michael. Let's go back to B, please. And this one also caught our eye. I'm sorry, A, not B. A, I apologize. Bernie Sanders, positive by 11 points. You guys got a theory about that? Again, he's not much in the news.
This is something's wrong. This is why I'm telling you, there's just. And I'm not being like the idea that 50% of Americans, like, I don't even think most Democrats like Bernie, right? So he's got he's very popular. He's got to be. I get that, but to suggest that half of the country likes that guy, it doesn't pass the smell test.
All right, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm being told in my ear from the control room. This was not a poll of Americans. This was a poll of people in Madison, Wisconsin. So perhaps that explains. Dan, sorry.
No, Sean, I couldn't believe it because Bernie's not in power. So Bernie can kind of make statements that I think generally people, look, he sticks to economic issues. So I could see when he talks about taxing the rich, which polls at 70-30. I could see when he talks about, healthcare should be for everybody. It's like apple pie. He's not having to say, hey, would you raise taxes to do?
Let me ask. Dan, let me flip this on you. If you got called by Gallup today and they said, Mr. Turrentine, do you have a favorable or unfavorable view of Bernie Sanders? What say you?
I would say, well, there's two ways to answer this. I'd say favorable in that he's good for the party to bring.
That's not how you answer a poll, dude.
It's a poll. Favorable, unfavorable.
Hey, it's the
Favorable,
morning
unfavorable.
meeting. You guys
Press
have a lot
one.
of polling.
Press one for favorable, 2 for unfavorable. No essay.
We did not get your response.
Exactly.
Please press
Please
again.
re-enter. Again, 1 for favorable and 2 for unfavorable. He said 2.
I will say this, though, and I get your point, Sean. What I find interesting about those two numbers, assuming this isn't like a total broken down poll, everyone says AOC probably doesn't run and Bernie doesn't run because he's too old. I don't know how those two don't look at these numbers. You look at all these polls of Democrats where they, just Democrats where they're very popular. I don't know how one of them, if not both, is not thinking seriously, getting 20,000 people after event and not think about running for president.
Yeah, I agree.
Last thing, but just real quick though, on my test, the reason I said this is Dan is a reasonable, pragmatic standard bearer of the Democratic Party, and if he has a so I get Bernie's got the progressives. Everyone who voted for Trump is going to say unfavorable, but if Dan can't wrap his head around it, then there's no way that guy can get close to 50.
Maybe the Republicans feel favorably towards him because they think he ruins the image of the Democratic Party, so they like him. The most incredible thing in that entire poll to me, 11% have an unfavorable view of the first American Pope. What's he done? I know.
Like,
how can 11%?
Just any? I was actually the first thing that jumped out at me is at 57%. I'm like, I'm sorry, who do you have to be that you don't like the Pope?
Yeah,
it's just you got to be a demented person.
All right, everyone. Now it's time for your questions. If you'd like to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand.
Somebody said, Sean, he's a White Sox fan. A lot of Cubs fans out there.
That's true. Well, and Red Sox fans.
Don't read the chat. Please raise your hand. Please raise your hand if you'd like to be part of the conversation. As you come in, I'll ask you to unmute. After you unmute, please tell us where you are with as much geographic specificity as you would like. And then your question or comment, Dan and Sean will not only be happy to respond, frankly, they'll be honored. And we start with Deborah. Deborah, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Hi, I'm in New York City. I'm in the very liberal Upper West Side. And I have a question about Ro Khanna. This is a little bit more for Dan. Sometimes I think he's getting it, but then sometimes I'm like, why do you do that? So he just tweeted yesterday, our party hungers for moral leadership. Let us oppose military aid used to kill civilians in Israel and during a mass starvation and recognize a Palestinian state. Let us stand up for the rights of immigrants. Let us not abandon trans kids. It's time to stand up for human dignity. And while I'm not against being moral, I have just found one of the reasons I'm a disaffected Dem is because of all this moral superiority nonsense that come from the Democrats and lord it over everybody else. And it just becomes preachy and annoying. And so both the combination of that preaching and then the particular topics he's choosing to, potentially elevate where he could go for more of a populist thing and maybe have more support. I'm just wondering, who's advising him, or what do you think? He goes in and out of being a bit populist and then getting a bit on this sort of social justice issue stand.
Very, very sophisticated question, Deborah, because you're right. There's a lack of through line for some. Dan.
Yeah, and I'll be curious too if what Mark has to say, because Mark knows him, I think, very well. I think there's a difference between clarity and superiority. One of the issues that Democrats are accused of is we're too wishy-washy on issues. So I may not agree with some of the statements that you just read, but I think what Ro may be trying to do is to say, look, you don't have to wonder where I stand, because so many Democrats won't answer trans kids, or they won't answer the Israeli-Palestinian question, right? Like, see Kamala Harris. So he may be attempting to say, hey, 2028ers, you don't have to ask where I stand. How about you? Again, that would be kind of a political move. I will say this. I do think Ro gets a lot of this. He has spoken out about the party's need to change its positions on some issues. Again, might not be the issues that I would choose there in some of those statements, but that, Mark, unless you disagree, I think he's probably saying, I'm clear, everyone else, you're not.
Yeah. Sean.
I sort of appreciate his voice in this conversation. I just don't see how he honestly believes he's got and part of it is just the platform being in the House. And maybe that's just an old school mentality, but I don't see how he breaks through. And I think he's doing the best he can on the platform he has, but he's not AOC. So anyway, I'll be interested to see what he ends up doing, because I think from just a mechanics standpoint, I don't see how he has a path forward beyond in terms of running for president.
But Sean, isn't that kind of what that tweet does, though? It gets out there, it gets people talking about a House member, like, you know.
Yeah, I've never, and again, I will admit my own bias on this, but I just don't think that House members have a big enough platform or apparatus. AOC maybe, but she's, you know, sort of, even then, I would doubt her ability to take it up to play in the real majors. It's easy to tweet and to say and do a viral Snapchat video. It's another thing to have a full national apparatus.
I'll address the presidential piece, and then Deborah, your question just about his like moorings. So historically, Sean's right. House members, you know, do not win nominations, and they actually don't typically do, you know, they don't get to the finals, right? They don't win primaries and caucuses. Here's some reasons why this might be different. First of all, he'll raise money. He'll raise more money. He's already got money in the bank, but he'll raise more money, including, I think, with a super PAC than your typical House candidate, number one. And that matters a lot, because most presidential campaigns end because they run out of money, not for any other reason. Number two, he's got social media game. And again, in the age in which we live, why didn't House members not do well before? One reason was because they wouldn't get booked on Meet the Press, right? They wouldn't be treated well. And in the media, he doesn't need that. He can go past the media with social. Two is he'll do anything. He's like you know, very few people in the Democratic Party. He'll go on any podcast, even conservative podcasts, and so he's going to get more name ID that way. Three is he's got a biography that can potentially break through. Born in Pennsylvania, born in the Rust Belt, now representing Silicon Valley. Five, he's very smart. You may not like his politics, not everyone likes his politics, but he's smarter than most House members, I say, having known a few House members over the years. And then lastly,
he's actually probably smarter than senators too.
Yeah, some senators. And then lastly, you've heard me say this before. In my experience, if you want to be nominated, you need to wake up every day and you say, what are the 10 things I need to do today to get elected? And then you need to do them all. And if you don't get them all done that day, you need to bring them on the list the next day. And if one of them is you need to use your teeth to chew through the handcuffs that are around your ankle, you need to do that. And I think of all the candidates in the field, he's got almost as much fire in the belly as anybody else. And then lastly, we don't know what the early states are, but early states are going to eventually emerge. And I think he will wear well in early states. I think he will be a better early state candidate than most House members are, in part because people will have heard of him. They'll have seen him on TV. And that helps in the early states. There's the irony and the paradox of this is people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, they want to hang out with someone they've seen on TV. And so for all those reasons, I think he could do better than your typical House candidate. Michael, write that up. Let's make that a piece. Just did that off the top of my head. Now, if you look at everything he's for and against, it's a lot like Donald Trump, which is to say, Donald Trump 2015, 2016, he's for party orthodoxy on some cases, and he's against it in others. And he's a Bernie, he backed Bernie Sanders, but he's a big believer in the free market. Like there's a lot about him that's iconoclastic. And I think if you take individual tweets, individual statements, you'll be confused at times about where do you put him on the spectrum. So on Israel, is he for Israel or against Israel? I think he's got a more nuanced position than that. And I think our politics and our media culture often punishes people with nuanced positions because it doesn't make sense. There's cognitive dissonance about it. I don't know that that'll help him get elected, but that seems to me how he takes positions on things. And he's not afraid to change his mind. And that's also unusual. Now, when Donald Trump changes his mind, he pretends like he never took the first position, right? Just all of a sudden he's for B. He used to be for A. I never was for A. Forget A. A's horrible. Khanna will acknowledge sometimes, well, I was for A, and now I'm for B, and he'll explain why. Again, I'm not sure that'll be rewarded, but it might be because it's different and it is more authentic than most. And he is an authentic guy compared again to most members of Congress, in my experience.
Can I share one other quick thing? Because one person responded to this and I thought it was good advice. I don't even know who this Tim Lewis person is. He said, Ro, if you want to reclaim moral authority, you have to do it on populist issues, not fringe ideological crusades about gender conversions and undocumented immigrants. Healthcare costs, UBI, good food, clean water, environmentalism beyond climate change, housing, wages, government accountability. There's so much meat on the bone, but the Democratic Party would rather die defending a molehill than summit the mountain.
So it's interesting. I think my sense is his preference would be to talk about those issues. The problem is the media is not interested in those issues. And if you want to be in the news cycle, he's probably got the biggest pop of celebrity or prominence on Epstein. I think that's probably the thing he's done that's gotten the most attention. Maybe I'm forgetting something. I don't think he wants to run for president on Epstein transparency. But if that's in the news, that's unfortunately.
Deborah, what did he tweet about immigration? What did he say?
And I mean, none of these, I don't be against someone being moral, right? It's more the sort of, lording it. No, I mean, just to stand up for the rights of immigrants. I mean, it wasn't anything.
All right, but you know what, though? That is now the Democratic position on standing up for, like, once you get past criminals in the border is more popular now than the Trump view. And that is in survey after survey after survey after survey. So that statement, while people may say, oh, the Democrats are such a loser, not so much right now.
Yeah.
It's not.
Great point. Great point. Deborah, thank you. Grateful to you for coming on. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. Travis, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for Sean and Dan.
Hi.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'm in Bozeman, Montana, over by
Nice.
Yellowstone National Park. So, thanks for having me on. I have two questions, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
My first one is sort of a general question. I've been watching you guys' show for about 2 months now. And I just love this idea of trying to find nuance in the conversation, but I'm a teacher and I always try and get my students to go away with like sources of their own so they can look these things up and gain information. But that's becoming really hard, especially with the distrust with the legacy media and stuff. And so from experts like you, like, where do you go? I mean, I know you're all like in the stuff, like you've been in the jobs and such, but for a layman like me, where can I go and where can I send my students to get a wide variety of different news stories that's maybe a little more trustworthy, if that's not too broad of a question?
Yeah. Travis, how old are the kids you teach? Oops, sorry. Got to unmute again.
I'm used to muting every time. Sorry. I teach 6th through 10th grade at a tiny little like private school. So we have mixed grades and a bunch of different stuff.
If you want to bring a group of 10th graders on here to tell us what they think of stuff, feel free to do that any day. We'd love to have them. And you have a second question, but you're pausing after the first. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Stand by. Sean, where should Travis and his students go for good information?
Every night, 6 p.m. Sean Spicer show. You can't avoid that. I would say this, like, I love everything. So I actually read some stuff on the left. I subscribe to a lot of, and I think part of it depends on what you're looking for. So, for example, we've had her on before, friend of the show, Jessica Reed Krause. If you're looking for Epstein stuff, she's amazing at it. There's a lot of people so it depends on what you're looking at. There's a bunch of guys that cover redistricting. Seth Keshel covers trends in voter reg. So it's not one thing, right? And that's the key, is that, like, there are certain places you go. It's like, if you're looking for sports, you can start at ESPN, but then if you really love the Red Sox, there's WEI and Nesson, and right. So what is it that you're trying to get at? And then find people who've been covering it. And that would be my advice, is that, like, the beautiful thing about Substack and podcasts now is that if there's an issue that you care about, like, I care about right to life stuff. Well, you've got Independent Women's Forum, Concerned Women for America. Like, there's a bunch of organizations that lead the way in certain things, transgender issues, et cetera. So the point that I would make is search, find, and challenge your students. Like I do a lot with Maha now. And so I go down rabbit holes of, like, who covers that, what Substacks, what podcasts, what influencers on Instagram. But it's not one thing. It's find what you care about and then find 5 or 10 sources. But I also try to find people who are on the other side. So, and we've done that on this show, where some nurses have come on and medical practitioners and said, I don't believe that study, and here's why. So, like, what I would urge people is, when you have an area that you're looking for, find 5, sources that are supporting of the issue and 5 that are against. And that way you're getting a balanced approach to the issue, and you can kind of start to make decisions about how they're presenting it, the facts that are behind it, etc. But we find a lot of this in the Maha movement, where people are for something but maybe don't have the data to back it up, or against something and don't have to back it up. Or you read a study and you find out, wow, that's interesting, the pharmaceutical industry paid for it. Take that for what it's worth. So that would be my advice, is challenge your students to find 5 pro and con sources on any particular issue, and come to a conclusion as to why one side made a better argument than another.
Dan.
I think Sean made a lot of good points. Travis, I do the same as Sean. I read Fox News and the most conservative websites, and I read MSNBC and the New York Times. And the only piece that I would then add is you use your common sense, your own life experience in your own community to kind of say, okay, one side is saying like the economy is terrible. Well, is it terrible in my area? One side is saying the economy is great. Is it? Okay, the truth might be in the middle somewhere. And that's kind of how you try to take the information that you get from both sides and then filter it through your own eyes and your friends and your family and, you know, your community is probably the better way to put it. And you'll realize politicians are human, right? I always say this, in 20 years in DC, one of the things I learned was both sides are full of it.
Travis,
have to use your common sense.
I agree with what my colleague said. And again, just to put a slightly different take on it, I'd urge you and your students to think of yourself as a very active consumer of news. You can't be passive. You have to bring a reader, listener, viewer beware attitude towards everything. There are stories in the New York Times that are world class, and there's stories that are extremely biased. And it's up to you to triangulate a little bit and cross-reference to figure out which are which. Second question, Travis.
Yeah, my second question is in reference to, I watched your guys' episode yesterday, and there was just a comment on when we're talking about this economic stuff. And I don't think, Dan, you intended it like this, but you made a comment about, going into the Christmas season, that those markets are going to be hit. And like, in my experience, I grew up on a farm in pretty middle class America in a very small rural town, and like Christmas shopping, 100%, that is important. You want to put more presents under the tree. But as some people who have, again, expertise, I'm just curious how like the two big markets are doing with Trump's sort of first part of his term, with people in this part of the country kind of care about gas stations and grocery stores. Like that's it. Like if my dad can't get his diesel at a fair price for farming, and if my mom can't get the meat at a fair price for cooking the harvest dinners, then they're angry. So like that, I think, is the finger on the pulse of the middle America. And I don't know how that's been doing, because I don't really know where to look for those economic kind of points. So
well said, Travis. You speak for tens of millions, Dan.
Yeah, it's a great point, Travis. All politics is local. And those are two issues that, as you would say, in your community are very important. Gas prices are down. It's great. I filled up our car the other day. I was like, I'll be damned. I haven't seen gas this low in years. And then number two, though, price of beef is up, I think 80%, right? And we like red meat, 4 boys in this house. And, noticed the same thing when I went to the grocery store. So as I said before, usually the answer is in between, right? I don't believe with Donald Trump, it's the greatest, golden age ever. And I don't believe with Democrats that the world's collapsing. There's some good, there's some bad. You hope for the best.
Sean.
I'd just say, look, I think your point is exactly the finger on the pulse of what most people do. If you walk into the store and you look at the price of beef or the price of eggs or the price of milk and say, wow, that's 10% more than I paid last week, then that tells you everything about how policies are impacting the country, right? When you drive down the street, gas is a little bit of a one-off because of some external factors. But my point is that, policies matter, and you can see that every day at the grocery store. So you are the best indicator of how things are going. And if your mom is telling you, hey, we're going to have to cut back this year because prices have risen so much on X, that tells you everything, versus if she comes and says, hey, get here early because Mama cooked an extra big bucket of this, and dessert's going to be flowing. You know how the economy's doing, but that to me is always the biggest tell.
Yeah.
People themselves, when they go to the grocery store, they don't need a government statistic to tell them that.
Travis, thank you for coming on and for being part of Two-Way. And again, if you want to bring some of your students to have a conversation, we'd love having them.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, a couple of news items that I learned by glancing over at my quad split on my YouTube TV. First of all, Bruce Reed. You guys know Bruce Reed, longtime Biden advisor?
Yeah. And it goes back to the 80s with Al Fromm.
Yep, with Al Fromm. I've known him
DLC.
I've known him since 91. Close aide to Joe Biden. He's testifying on the Hill today before the investigative committee. So our normal question, fifth or no fifth? Dan, will Bruce take the fifth?
No, I keep saying yes, and they haven't. So,
Sean?
No, he will not.
All right, I'm going to go counter and say yes, he will. He's not a lawyer, and just my spidey sense says that he'll take the fifth. We'll see. All right, you guys know Beyonce has a new ad for Levi's?
Oh, she's fighting with my girl Sydney Sweeney? What?
It's on the horse, right? It's on a horse or a motorcycle.
I think there's multiple ones. The one I just saw, she's playing pool.
And then, I've heard about it. I haven't seen it. She rides away or something. But
all right, maybe at the end she rides away. I didn't see the whole thing. Dan, will we be talking about that ad on Monday? And not we, but like, will that be a news story for this week, or is that no?
Ooh, she's popular. But if it had to be Team Beyonce, Team Sydney Sweeney, I'm Team Sydney Sweeney if I have to choose.
Okay, Sean,
we will not be talking about it. No.
Okay. All right. You need to see the ad before you make that judgment. All right.
No.
Yeah. You trust me. You need to see the ad before you make the judgment. I'm giving you
okay.
Giving you some important advice. Tom, welcome in. Quick last question from you. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind for Sean and Dan?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. I'm in Iowa. I'm a 3-time Trump voter, and I have a question about why, going back a week or two, the Arab League and its vote against Hamas, unanimous vote against Hamas, has not been covered. Why is that?
It got a little in the New York Times.
Got a little bit, but you're right. It didn't get a ton of coverage.
I haven't seen it anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll just tell you, Middle East news in general doesn't get covered that much, and the time difference sometimes plays a role. But you're right; it should have been covered more than it was. Sean,
I agree. I'm always fascinated. I don't know if it's editor bias, meaning when they assign the stories, if they just don't care, if they don't have the bandwidth. But I am fascinated how it continues to be a bigger issue in the discussion, but fewer news stories. It's almost like a lot of people want it, and yet it doesn't get the coverage.
Yeah. Tom, we don't have a satisfying answer except to say you're right. It should have gotten more. We can't really say why. Thank you. Sean, what do you have tonight?
Obviously, the latest on redistricting and the Russia hoax, but then we're going to talk about border security. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons joins the show, and then Arizona Sheriff Mark Daniels also joins to talk about what he's seeing on the front line. So I think we'll have a great discussion about how Trump policies have changed the face of immigration and border security.
Awesome. All right, 3 shows to tell you about. First of all, Two-Way tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Lindsay Keith, who used to co-host a little show called Spicer and Company. Lindsay Keith and Ian Smith will join me on Two-Way tonight. We'll have all the day's news, including whatever the president does and says at his executive order signing at 4 o'clock, and whether Bruce Reed took the fifth. Moynihan Report immediately afterwards, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Michael's guest, Hamilton Morris of the Hamilton Morris podcast. I almost called my podcast that, but I didn't. I went with Next Up. My Next Up show on the Megyn Kelly Network will drop later today on YouTube and on podcast networks. And my guests, Corey Lewandowski. We're going to talk about the origins of Donald Trump and a lot else. And then the current very popular mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan, who's running for governor of Michigan as an independent, will be my guest. And my reported monologue is on what is next up for Kamala Harris. So please join me for that. And
is that going to be brief?
That monologue? It's not. That monologue is going to be long because I got some good I got some good reporting. So join me for that. And the 3 of us will see you in 23 hours and 59 minutes and 20 seconds right here back for another episode Dan, if it's 9 a.m. Eastern time, it's
The morning meeting. The best.
play us off the air, Paul.
Welcome to the morning meeting. I love it. For those who missed it, I was bopping to it on my run this morning.
2, 1.
Welcome to the morning meeting
with
Mark and Sean and Dan. If you should think of a question, all you gotta do is raise your hand. With a presumption of grace to all, peace, love, and understanding during the call. Welcome to the
gotta play number
meeting,
one.
where the best politics is at.
Dan likes number one.
Conversations
Play number
like
one
no
tomorrow.
other, but don't
No,
put
no, no,
smack
no.
in
We
the
got
chat.
tomorrow.
Welcome to the morning meeting, where the best politics is at. With conversations like no other, but don't put smack in the chat.
On that note, have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.